Eliot and Benjamin Tucker, the individualist anarchist who's been a major influence on my thinking. Eventually she decided, when Joyce started Ulysses, that he should not have to undergo the hassles of trying to write such a complicated book while teaching half a day at the Berlitz School. So she sent him a monthly check so that he could quit teaching and devote full time to Ulysses. A few years later, she began supporting him entirely all through the writing of Finnegan's Wake. And to Joyce, none of this made any sense. Why should Ezra Pound, a man he never met, appear out of nowhere like a fairy godmother and work all these miracles to advance his career? But Joyce finally found the explanation. Pound's father was named Homer. I mean, Joyce's mind worked that way. He was always seeing synchronicities and meaningful correspondences, you know.
Why was Pound so intrigued by Joyce?
Well, Pound had a tremendous capacity for enthusiasm for original work. Pound discovered T.S. Eliot and Ernest Hemingway and quite a few others, as well as Joyce. Joyce was one of his major enthusiasms, but T.S. Eliot was a major enthusiasm too. Pound edited The Wasteland at Eliot's suggestion to make it even more modernistic than Eliot's first draft. And he kept writing reviews of Eliot's poetry all over the place, trying to attract more attention to Eliot. Just when Ulysses came out, Pound wrote 5 reviews of that for different magazines, including one in French for a leading French literary magazine. Pound had a lot of generosity and a lot of revolutionary fervor. He wanted to change the structure of Western literature, and everybody seemed to him to be doing something original and important. He devoted tremendous energies to promoting them. Pound also publicized Robert Frost. In the 1930s, in a letter, Pound mentioned a review which was praising Robert Frost as a poet writing in the Native American tradition, as distinguished from Ezra Pound, who's writing as a European, and putting Pound down. And Pound said, the funny thing was that I knew from the day I started promoting Frost that eventually somebody would use Frost as a club to hit me over the head. Well, next to Ulysses and Finnegan's Wake, I think Pound's Cantos has more excitement and information than any other 20th century literary work. Cantos invented modern poetry, you might almost say. Let's say Pound and Eliot and a few others were writing modern poetry before the Cantos. But the Cantos went in so many radical and new directions that poetry has never been the same. You can tell the difference between a pre-Pound poem and a post-Pound poem almost as easily as you can tell the difference between Renaissance music and 19th century music. Pound was a major influence on American and European poetry from the teens of this century on. In the 1930s, he became a hero to a lot of young Japanese poets, and his cult has grown and grown in Japan. There's a whole magazine in Japanese devoted to Pound's studies. And now he's becoming a major influence on Latin American poetry, too.
So is it just his wide-ranging influence that interests you?
No, I was just pointing out that he wanted to make a revolution, and he succeeded. What fascinates me about Pound, several things. First of all, I find the Cantos the funniest of all the great epic poems, and in most respects the most beautiful, although parts of it don't look beautiful. Parts of it look pretty dull, actually, until you see how they function in the structure of the whole. And rhythmically, the Cantos are more of a delight to read out loud than just about any poetry in English. And the contents fascinate me. The Cantos seems to me the first multicultural poem. Pound was even more cryptic than Joyce in explaining what he was doing, but he did call it the tale of the tribe. And when you look at it, you find the tribe is all of humanity. The poem has as much Chinese history as European or American. It's got African references and ancient Sumerian references. It's an attempt to write a global epic, and it's the first attempt. And I think it's going to be much more important in the 21st century than it has been in the 20th, because I see the 21st century as the time when East and West will more and more merge. For the intelligentsia of the East and West, it'll be a great Rosetta Stone by which the Orient can understand the Occident better and the Occident can understand the Orient better. This is not accurate. Roughly the first third is Occidental, the middle third is Oriental, and the last third is cross-cutting between them to show similarities as well as differences. Like in the closing 30 or so cantos, you frequently get quotes from classical authors in Latin or Greek or Old French or Old English or whatnot with Chinese ideograms in the margin. And this is where Pound wants you to see a connection between an Occidental and an Oriental concept. And he also wants you to see the differences as well as the similarities. I find it about as inexhaustible as Ulysses or Finnegan's Wake. I've been reading the cantos for 50 years now, and I haven't gotten bored yet. I'm still finding new delights in them.
Do you feel that Pound and Joyce fed each other artistically?
Well, Pound fed Joyce financially for a while. I mean, he helped Joyce get fed. Their influence on each other remains somewhat problematical. I think they were going in different directions, although they were both trying to get away from what they both regarded as the hypocrisy and pomposity of the Victorian period into something nitty-gritty and down-to-earth. But Joyce was much more preoccupied with human psychology, although his interest went far beyond that. But if you can find one center to Joyce, you might say the study of guilt and remorse and shame and how it infects human beings, because those are the main topics you notice when you start studying psychology in Ireland. Once you make sex, or once you make 99 out of 100 sex acts into sins, you got a population that everywhere everybody feels guilty and is afraid they're going to get caught sooner or later. And that's one of Joyce's major themes. And he projects it outward onto the whole of human history, seeing how in different forms it has infected almost all human cultures. Ireland is just one weird special case of that. Pound's interest more and more moved to economics. Pound and Joyce use a lot of the same anthropological sources. And the cantos begins with Odysseus traveling to the underworld to consult with Tiresias. So there's a slight parallel with the Odyssey, just like there is in Ulysses. There are many parallels and there are many differences. Pound admired everything Joyce did extravagantly up until Finnegan's Wake, which he couldn't stand.
Why?
Well, that's one of those riddles of human life. Pound had a vast appreciation of creative, original work, but Finnegan's Wake was too creative and original in ways that Pound didn't like.
Did he feel Joyce had just departed too far?
Well, when Finnegan's Wake was being serialized in Transition magazine, it was under the working title, Work in Progress, and Pound in his letters refers to it as Joyce in Regress. I think Pound looked at a few samples of Finnegan's Wake as they were published, tried to figure out what the hell Joyce was doing, and discovered that a great deal of it was scatological and childish level excretory and urinary puns, and I don't think Pound deciphered much more than that. He thought Joyce was exploring the murkier areas of the Freudian unconscious, and the hell with that stuff, it's not that important. Finnegan's Wake is a lot on that level, but it's on every other level too. It's on 1,001 levels. So I think that's the level that you find first, especially if you've read Ulysses and you know that Joyce was pushing towards more and more